Welcome everybody. Want to welcome you to the week number 9 of the You and I Together series. And today we're going to be talking about steak. And so that's that steak, anyone. We're looking forward to having a great time and talking about some of the things that make steak really good to eat. To get started, though, we are going to watch a short video. And so we'll take a few minutes and enjoy this video about some of the health and nutrition programs the university has to offer.
University of Idaho Extension is keeping Idaho's citizens and communities healthy by helping people of all ages improve their health and build important life skills. From nutrition education, diabetes management, and food safety to family finance education, UI Extension is helping build healthy and thriving Idahoans.
All right, so great video about some of the health and nutrition programs the University of Idaho Extension has to offer. Well, today we're going to be talking about steak, and my name is Scott Jensen. To introduce myself, I am a livestock, range, and pasture management educator for the University of Idaho. Mostly I focus on beef cattle, but I do a little bit of work with other livestock. And meat science is kind of one of those things that's a little bit of a passion of mine. And so that's why we're going to talk about it today. Yeah, one of the things we're going to do today is just talk about seasonings. How do we season a steak to make it the best that it can be? And I think you've maybe have been to the store and seen that there are lots of options. Here's just an example of a few of the options you could pick up at a store. But we're going to make our own today. And so hopefully you have taken time to look at the list, the materials list for today's activity, and are going to be able to participate right along with us. But here's just a few things. When we prepare today, we're going to use kosher salt. Kosher salt is a great cooking salt. If we just use ordinary table salt, well, it tends to make things a little too salty because the salt crystals themselves are very fine, very small. And if we go to sea salt or flake salt, those are just a little bit too big or too coarse to really do what we would like them to do. And I'm gonna demonstrate this, but after we make our seasoning, then I'm gonna go ahead and season a steak the way I think it should be done. And if you look at these pictures, anybody want to eat those steaks down on the bottom left? Boy, there are some over-seasoned steaks, in my opinion. What we would really like to do is kind of get, somewhere between a light and moderate coating of seasoning, depending on your preferences. The idea is to enhance the flavor of the meat, not to just totally cover it up and wipe it out. Then we're going to take it out to the grill and cook it. Okay? And cooking, boy, it's an important part of making a good steak. How do we do that? Or what do we do? Well, we're going to use a thermometer so that we can be sure that it's done to a safe temperature, but yet not overdone to where it actually really affects how it tastes. Okay. So before we get started on that, I want to have Serene's going to launch a poll for us. Just curious to know, what's your favorite way to enjoy some beef? Interesting to see. No hamburger. I have a few, at least one. Oh, there's some hamburger now. I have at least one of my daughters that is by far her preferred way to enjoy beef, hamburger. Personally, I do like a good burger, but I prefer a roast, or not a roast, but a steak. So a few more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and we'll go ahead and close that one. Looks like steak's the most popular choice as far as how you all like to enjoy some beef. Okay, So with that, we're gonna, if I can get that out there. We're gonna move on to tough choice, and they like all three. Well, I like all three too, but I definitely have some, there are some steaks that I prefer. When we look at doneness, here's kind of a quick guide color-wise, but notice more important than color are the temperatures. And for most steaks, they're probably gonna be better served medium rare to medium, somewhere in that range. That's where most people tend to really like it. It's done enough to be safe, but it's not so done that it's dry and difficult to chew. Here's kind of how I see it, and this is just a fun way to look at it. Rare, medium rare, wait a minute, you're getting carried away. And then, of course, if you like it like Serene does, it's ruined. So with that, I'm going to stop. We'll come back to these questions here in a few minutes. But let's pull out your seasonings. Let's see what we can do in order to put some things together. So here's my preference. Now you can adjust things any way you like for your own personal preference, but I really on most beef cuts, I really enjoy some kosher salt, some granulated garlic, and some coarse black pepper. I like those in about an even mix. And so that's what to make things quicker, I measured them all out earlier. So I'm just gonna take those individually. There's the coarse black pepper. Here comes the kosher salt. And then finally, the granulated garlic. Put those all in a bowl. I'm gonna stir them up, get them mixed pretty good. And then my preference that helps in order to be able to get it on or to evenly apply it to the whatever cut of meat, I like to put it in as shakers. So I keep some of these big shakers that I buy the different individual spices in. And so I'll keep that shaker, use a little funnel to try not to make too big of a mess. And then there, I've got it all inside there, and I can shake it up some more. One of the things that's important in seasoning is to try to keep it well mixed together. You will notice that these different seasonings are different size. They're different size granules. And so they tend to separate out the fine stuff, which is the granulated garlic, versus the more coarse stuff, which is the salt and the pepper. And so when I keep them in a shaker like this, I can continually mix them and then be able to apply them like I would want to. It is okay to use a different type of pepper, but I would just say that you need to taste those things in smaller quantities first. I would hate to mix up an entire bottle with white pepper and then find out that I just personally don't care for it so much. And white pepper is gonna taste different than black pepper, and it's gonna have any spices that you mix together, the flavor profiles are different. And so my suggestion would be that you try mixing those in small quantities. So if there's something you don't like, you'll not be dumping out a big bottle of it. These things tend to be a little expensive.
So there are some more questions. We'll make sure we get to all the questions today as we keep rolling along.
So yeah, we'll keep rolling and we'll get to those questions soon. I'm going to step up here to the camera for just a second. And I'll this one, because I want to show you the steak that I have that we're going to season now is it's a ribeye. So ribeyes are one of the more tender cuts. This would be a slice off of what we know as a prime rib, okay? But the ribeye is the muscle, and you'll notice, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but this has a lot of little flecks of white fat in the muscle. That is called marbling, and marbling helps it to be juicy and flavorful. And so that's one of the reasons why I picked out a ribeye and a choice ribeye, because it has lots of good marbling flavor. So I'm going to open this up. Before you do handle meat, it's a very much a good food handling practice to put on some gloves and help keep everything nice and clean. And so I'm going to put on the gloves, and then I'm going to very carefully use the knife, open up the package, and then pull the steak out. So here's our ribeye steak. Okay, I'm going to take that. Hopefully, Sreen's going to help me here a little bit. I'm going to do just a little bit of trimming for today's purposes. But when you cook a ribeye, it's good to have a little bit of external fat. But if there's excessive amounts, more than say a quarter to maybe 3/8 of an inch, you might want to trim that down just a little bit. And that is not going to affect the flavor very much. And so this, I've just taken just a few little external pieces, trimmed those off, and I've got them there ready to go. So now it's time for the seasoning. Okay, if I just grab my bottle with my hands that have been handling the meat, all of a sudden the outside of my bottle will be all nasty. So I'm going to pull off one of my gloves, okay, and then get my seasoning mix, open it up, and now it's all ready to go. Now, if you want to season and season nice and evenly, you need a little distance from the meat. And so I'm looking maybe 18 inches, 1.5 feet. I want a little distance there, because if I'm down here really close, then it's not gonna, I just am not gonna apply very evenly, and I'm most likely I'm going to over apply. I'm gonna have too much seasoning on there. And so I'm gonna start here. My hand down on the steak level can help guide some of that. And I'm just gonna season just a light sprinkle across. I can give it a little pat to help hold it. And then let's see if, yeah. So there's kind of what it looks like. I'm going to turn it over, because a steak has two sides. I'm going to go ahead and do that same kind of light to moderate seasoning on the other side. Little pat there. If I was doing a larger piece of meat, say a tri-tip or something, I would also want to be careful to make sure that I season all of the edges. On a steak where it's a thinner cut, I'm not nearly so worried about that. But there we have the steak. It's all ready to go to the grill. While we transition out to the grill, Serene's got another question that's going to pop up on a poll. And so this one's related to cattle within the state of Idaho. Okay, how many cattle and calves? And when you answer this question, this one's related to both dairy and beef cattle. So how many total cattle and calves are there in the state of Idaho? So with that, we are going to head out to the grill. Anyway, I'll give you the correct answer as we go out to the grill. If you're all done, I'll give you 5 more seconds to answer. And the correct answer is about 2.5 million cattle in the state of Idaho. So it does look like that was the majority answer anyway. Now, one thing I want you to see, hopefully you can see with all the sun out here, but this tray is red, okay? For food safety reasons, we need to bring raw products out to the grill on one plate or tray, and then finished product or cooked product on a different tray, a clean one. For our classes, we do red for raw and black colored trays for cooked products. I'm going to put this on the grill. Got the tongs. But I've got that steak on the grill, and hopefully Shireen can show you what it looks like. Now this one, we're not going to sit out here and make you watch it cook, but I do want to show you one thing. Really important on a steak is to use a thermometer. I like an instant read thermometer because they're quick and I can get a very accurate temperature very quickly. On these thermometers, there's a little shoulder on the point. Not sure you can see it online, but that's how far we should insert the thermometer to get an accurate reading. So as I look at this steak, I insert to that point, and as expected, it's not nearly done enough. Okay, currently it's 68, 69 degrees, somewhere in there. So this one's gonna have to cook a little while before it's ready to go. We have one that's already done. And so we're gonna go in and cut that and talk just a little bit about it. So as we transition back in, we've got one more poll question for you related to what county in Idaho has the most beef cattle? So this is beef only. So see if you know from the 5 counties that are listed. Well, what did everybody say? I'm curious to see that. So we see Owyhee County on the top, and actually that is correct. Those counties, just for your information, those counties are listed in order of most beef cattle down to the fewest. At least those are the top 5 counties in Idaho. Owyhee County being number 1. Okay. So now I've got a steak that I cooked just prior to the start of the you and I together today. And so after I cooked it, it's been sitting here resting. It's important that you give meat a chance to rest. It allows the juices to spread evenly through the meat, and it's going to give you a better eating quality. On a steak, ideally, probably in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 minutes rest. It always depends on how large that cut of meat is. But I've got this steak here. I'm going to put it on the tray. What I try to do on a steak, if I'm looking to cook it to, let's say I want to cook it to medium rare, okay? I'm probably going to cook it to about 130, 135 degrees internal temperature. The thing that happens is it continues to cook a little bit when you take it off. And so it will rise an additional, depending on the meat and how hot you were cooking it, might rise an additional 5 or 10 degrees. So I've got this steak. I'm going to bring it in here. On a steak like this, I don't worry so much about how I cut it because the steak itself was cut across the grain. If it was a larger chunk of meat, say a tri-tip, I'd want to be sure I sliced it across the grain as I slice so that it will be more tender and less chewy. So when I come in, I'm just going to slice off a little bit. You notice, I don't know how well you can see there, but as you look in there, there's a nice little pink center, and that pink center tells me that this steak was basically cooked to medium, okay? So if you're able to see, if I put a little pressure on this with the blade of my knife, I can see some juices there. This steak is gonna be nice, tender, juicy, and in my opinion, it's seasoned just right. So from here on, I would just say, bon appetit, let's eat. So with that, that kind of, in a nutshell, puts everything together on how you might cook, season and cook the perfect steak. So with that, I would love to answer any questions that you might have.
So Scott, one of the questions was, are there suggested times for how long to allow that seasoning to set?
So there have been, here, I've looked at some different things and watched some different videos about it where some guys, some meat science guys, and I would have to call them meat science nerds because they're trying all kinds of different things, but where they seasoned a steak and cooked it immediately, they seasoned a steak and let it sit an hour, and they seasoned a steak and let it sit 24 hours. And they timed it all so they could cook them at the same time and eat them. The preference was, or I guess the ultimate comments was that it really didn't make a ton of difference. Sometimes there's a thought that if you season too far in advance, the salt will tend to dry the meat out. But at least in their little experiment, it didn't really make that big of a difference. And so it really, I think it comes down to personal preference.
Okay, perfect. And is there a recommendation on letting steaks set out to kind of warm up before cooking them, or allowing them maybe to reach somewhat room temperature? Should that be 30 minutes or an hour before cooking, or what's the recommendation there?
Well, I would probably defer to my food safety colleague. I'm not going to give my personal. I guess, yeah, Serene has said that we don't want to let them sit out longer than 30 minutes. But I do agree, especially on something like a steak, if it has a chance to warm up just a little bit, it tends to cook more evenly. We just don't want to let it sit out for hours and then run into some food safety risk.
Okay. And then what are some good cuts that you would recommend to purchase for barbecuing?
So my favorite is a cut called the flat iron steak. And a flat iron is a steak that they actually kind of only discovered not that many years ago. But a flat iron steak is ultimately, it's the second most tender cut of meat on the entire carcass. And so a flat iron is very good. The thing I like about it is it has a lot of marbling in it, and so you get a tremendous amount of flavor. In comparison, the most tender cut is a tenderloin, and the tenderloin is very tender, but I don't think the tenderloin has the same marbling in it, so it doesn't quite have the same flavor. So it is super tender, but not as flavorful. That flat iron really is flavorful. And then from there, I really like a top sirloin, a ribeye. All of those tend to be marbled fairly well.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. So I don't see any more questions in the chat at the moment, but if individuals have some, or you want to use that raise hand feature, you're welcome to do that, and we can call on any individuals. But we do have another question that has come in. So how do you cook the inside when the outside appears to be burning?
So that's a good question, because sometimes you just sort of have a wreck at the grill. And the biggest thing there would be that you need to get a little distance from your heat source, whatever that happens to be. And so if you can do something to space it, do something to calm the heat down or disperse the heat a little better, that can help you to be able to get the inside cooked properly without totally blackening the outside. Yeah, so I saw that next question, that some people tend to think that Angus is the type of meat to get. And do I think there's a difference? Well, I would just tell you there is as much difference within a breed as there is between breeds. And that goes on a lot of things, but the difference as far as if you purchase certified Angus beef, in order to get that label, that beef has to come from an animal that is 51% or more black hided. So it's got to be a black animal, 51% or more. And then it has to grade average choice or higher. So it's got to be average choice or prime in order to qualify. So that means it's got more marbling in it than something that would grade low choice or select. So you add those factors and a few others in, and that certified Angus beef label kind of helps, I guess, guarantee that it's going to be a satisfactory eating experience. Doesn't mean that you can't find the same thing in other breeds. It just is a program that's allowed Angus to do that. Certified Hereford beef would be another one where it's very similar. There are standards that you meet in order to get there. And I know we're short on time, but I'd add one more that's an Idaho company. AgriBeef markets a product that they call Snake River Farms beef. And in order to make it as Snake River Farms to get that label, that really is some Wagyu influenced beef. And so it's a kind of a premium product. So there are a lot of different things. I kind of nerd out on the meat science part of things, but all of those labels, all of those programs have different requirements in order to get in there. But that's the long answer to why certified Angus beef is so popular.
I'll turn it back over to Serene and Scott if they have any other final items to close us out today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and we wish you a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.